Number 7. Jonah Bessett. A 25-year-old Brinks truck driver staged a fake armored car heist in January of 2021 before he and his 2 accomplices fled with the stolen cash. Federal investigators were able to identify the suspected thief as Jonah Bessett, who'd reportedly conducted the elaborate robbery in Mobile, Alabama on January the 5th. Towards carrying out the heist, he'd enlisted the help of his girlfriend, Sierra Brianna Overton, and his brother, Isaiah Campbell. According to court documents, the former Brinks employee had loaded his truck with bags of cash meant to be delivered at various New Horizon Credit Union locations in the area. Bessett reportedly separated the sacks filled with the bills of largest denomination from the rest of the bags, placing them in the secondary passenger compartment. While traveling on his delivery route, Bessett stopped at Doug's Quick Mart to fill his truck up with gas and purchase a cup of coffee from inside the store. As he walked back to his vehicle, he was allegedly accosted by a pair of armed thugs who stole the money bags from the truck's passenger compartment and absconded in a silver-colored getaway car. Bessett reportedly fired a single round from his service weapon in the general direction of the fleeing vehicle. During local police ensuing investigation, it was discovered that the robbery had been set up by Bessett himself, who feigned being a victim throughout the altercation. Law enforcement officers tracked down and searched a storage unit registered to the Brinks driver, inside of which they found roughly $100,000 of the stolen money. It later emerged that Bessett and his 2 accomplices had made off with nearly $500,000 during the heist. In addition to paying back the full amount that had been taken, Bessett was also ordered to serve 2 years in a federal prison. All 3 of the thieves were scheduled to be sentenced in Mobile County Circuit Court in September of 2022. Number 6. The Greenwood Village Robbery. A Brinks employee from Colorado was fired from her job about a week after her armored truck was robbed during the fall of 2019. The incident was reportedly carried out by 3 armed suspects who targeted the Brinks truck operated by Denver resident Sabrina Gamino at about 2:30 p.m. on October the 30th. The mother of 2 was held at gunpoint while the thieves took everything they could from the back of the vehicle. Within roughly 30 seconds, the 3 perpetrators fled the scene with hundreds of thousands of dollars. In spite of the robbery having been caught on surveillance footage, the FBI struggled to identify the suspects during their investigation, and the authorities ultimately called upon the Greenwood Village community for help in locating the trio. The most recent available updates to the situation indicated that no arrests had yet been made by the police. Gamino was relieved of her duties in the aftermath of the incident. The woman's former employer cited her supposed violation of company protocol during the robbery as the reasoning behind their decision to fire her. Number 5. Joel March. A 36-year-old van driver was accused of stealing more than $1.3 million from the armored vehicle entrusted to him in April of 2019. The suspect, identified as Joel March of South London, reportedly worked for the British private security company G4S. On the day of the theft, March had been tasked with delivering a total of 48 containers, each carrying large amounts of cash, to various addresses across the districts of Holborn, located in central London. A member of the public contacted G4S officials after noticing that March's van had been parked on a double yellow line in the road for an unusually long time frame. Local police were consequently called to the scene to investigate, at which point officers discovered that the keys had been left in the ignition, the driver was nowhere to be found, and 43 of the 48 cash containers were missing. It was initially theorized that the van had been hijacked and its driver kidnapped, but investigators soon established that the theft had been an inside job orchestrated by March himself. The day after the robbery, the thief allegedly used some of the stolen money to purchase designer clothes at a JD Sports store, but he was quickly tracked down by the authorities and taken into custody at his Clapham home. March was ultimately sentenced to 4 years and 8 months in prison as a consequence for the crime. As of the latest updates on the case, roughly 95% of the missing cash remained outstanding. Number 4. The deadly West Chatham heist. 2 suspects were charged in the aftermath of an attempted armored car robbery that resulted in the death of a security guard on November the 16th of 2021. According to the Chicago Police Deputy Chief, The fatal incident had occurred at about 10:20 a.m. when 3 armored vehicle guards were loading an ATM with cash at the Bank of America branch in the city's West Chatham neighborhood. A car pulled up to the scene carrying 4 masked assailants, 3 of whom exited the vehicle and demanded money from the guards while holding them at gunpoint. The armed robbers then opened fire, shooting LaShonda Hartz, aged 47, a total of 6 times. One of Hartz's partners, an unidentified 46-year-old male, also suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the lower extremities. The suspects fled the scene empty-handed after the 3rd security guard returned fire. The 2 victims were transported to the University of Chicago Medical Center, where Hartz was pronounced dead. Her partner had also arrived to the hospital in critical condition, but was ultimately stabilized. Approximately 30 minutes after the failed heist, one of the robbers was captured by surveillance cameras at a Boost Mobile location, where he'd reportedly stolen several cell phones before leaving the store. At around 11:30 a.m., the police were called to the scene of an alleged traffic accident in which a vehicle had struck multiple parked cars and a tree. Upon their arrival, officers discovered 2 deceased passengers inside the vehicle, who were later identified as 21-year-old Naquan Harper and George Holmes, aged 27. Both men had allegedly taken part in the attempted robbery and were executed by their accomplices in the incident's aftermath. 911 dispatchers received a report that the 2 remaining suspects had been spotted running into a house on Saginaw Avenue. They were taken into custody after law enforcement officers, including a special weapons and tactics team, surrounded the home in which they were hiding. The 2 individuals were identified as 19-year-old Antoine Montgomery and DeAndre Jennings, aged 21. Both were charged with first-degree murder and attempted first-degree murder, along with various other felony offenses in connection to their deadly crime spree. Number 3. The California freeway spill. In November of 2021, a considerable amount of cash spilled out the back of an armored truck that was traveling down Interstate 5 in Carlsbad, California. The mishap resulted in a number of motorists leaving their vehicles to scoop up handfuls of the bills that had been scattered all over the roadway. California Highway Patrol reportedly began receiving calls about the incident at around 9:15 a.m. According to local authorities, the doors of the armored transport vehicle had accidentally swung open while it was moving at highway speeds. The truck driver pulled over on the side of the road and started picking up as much of the money as he could. Shortly thereafter, other drivers stopped their cars in the middle of the interstate in order to get out and grab some of the cash for themselves. Within minutes, videos began circulating on social media in which people could be seen gleefully collecting the spilled cash, which primarily consisted of $1 and $20 bills. Traffic on I-5 reportedly came to a standstill as a consequence of the chaotic scramble. A man and a woman who'd allegedly taken some of the cash were arrested at the scene after they had gotten stuck on the freeway with their keys locked in the car. Members of the State Highway Patrol coordinated with the FBI in their subsequent efforts to determine the identities of the individuals who'd stolen money. Everyone who'd partaken in gathering the dispersed bills was urged to return the cash within 48 hours so as to avoid criminal prosecution. Today's topic was requested by IARE. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. The Lexington Brinks accident. On November the 5th of 2012, a Brinks truck was involved in an accident on Highway 52 in Lexington, North Carolina. In the aftermath of the crash, investigators learned that $41,000 was missing from the armored vehicle. According to the Lexington Dispatch, the truck had been struck by another car on the roadway shortly before the incident was reported to local authorities at 9:25 p.m. As a result of the collision, the armored truck swerved into an embankment and was consequently flipped over, causing money to spill out onto the highway. 2 Brinks employees, 32-year-old Michael Geringer and John Baldwin, aged 23, were transported to Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center following the accident. Geringer, the driver of the truck, was reported as being in critical condition. The other motorist involved was 47-year-old Maida Brotens, who was charged with improper lane change and an insurance violation. Although members of the North Carolina Highway Patrol claimed that all of the scattered money had been successfully recovered, Brinks' officials later discovered the outstanding $41,000 during an audit. In the months that followed the incident, Davidson County Sheriff's deputies identified Thomas Eugene Strange, aged 37, as the individual responsible for stealing the cash from the scene of the accident. He ultimately faced a charge of felony larceny after being arrested in February of 2013. Number 1. the 1981 Brinks robbery. On October the 20th of 1981, members of two militant political groups carried out the armed robbery of a Brinks truck in Nanuet, New York. The violent incident resulted in the deaths of a security guard and two police officers who tried to thwart the robbers' escape attempt. The attack was reportedly carried out at 3:55 p.m. when Brinks guards Peter Page and Joseph Trombino had just exited the Nanuet Mall and were returning to their armored vehicle with bags of money in hand. Unbeknownst to the two men, heavily armed members of the underground organization known as the Black Liberation Army were stationed in a red van nearby. While Page and Trombino loaded the bags into the back of the truck, the assailants opened fire on the unsuspecting guards. During the ensuing gunfight, Page was fatally shot in the chest while Trombino suffered serious wounds to his shoulder and arm. The truck's driver, James Kelly, was hit in the head by glass shards and bullet shrapnel after the robbers fired multiple shotgun blasts at the vehicle's bulletproof windshield. The thieves reportedly grabbed $1.6 million in cash before fleeing the scene. They drove to a parking lot where a yellow Honda and a U-Haul truck had been placed in a strategically advantageous position. After transitioning their getaway into the two new vehicles, the robbers were eventually stopped by a police barricade. The effort to cut them off triggered a second shootout that claimed the lives of Nyack police officers Waverly Brown and Edward O'Grady. Following the latter altercation with law enforcement, two of the suspects got into a getaway car being driven by Judith Clark, a member of the Weather Underground. Clark was then involved in a chase with the police that concluded with her being arrested along with her associates. The other suspects in the deadly heist were each apprehended at various times during the 5-year investigation that was subsequently launched. Following lengthy prison sentences for all involved, some of the robbery's participants were granted parole, including Clark, who was released on April the 17th of 2019. Thanks for watching. Would you rather drive a Brinks truck through a crime-riddled town devoid of any police presence, or attempt to walk across a busy highway blindfolded? Let us know in the comments section below.